Hello, tech friends, and thank you for tuning into Emerging Technologies in Business, where we take a deep dive into different technologies that are impacting businesses today and in the very near future. I'm your host, Brock Riney, and this podcast is brought to you by Kincannon XR. Let's talk tech. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining another episode of Emerging Technologies in Business. I'm your host, Brock Riney, and today we're joined by a very special guest. We've got Brandon Naids. He's the CEO and co-founder of the Orlando-based VR company Talon Simulations that offer 2, 3, 4, and 6 degrees of freedom motion platforms for entertainment and training applications that replicate land, sea, and air vehicles. And Talon uses full motion simulators for training and entertainment. And I'm excited to have Brandon on today's show. Brandon, thank you for being here. Thank you for the time. How's the world going in sunny Florida out there?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to talk about just the technology and the industry as a whole. And being in Orlando this time of year, it's kind of when it transitions into the summertime, storms and everything like that. So a little hot and humid, but gotta love it. You get used to it eventually.
I'm living down here in Texas, so I'm used to the heat. I'm a big baby when it comes to the cold, but I'll be all right when it comes to the heat. I'll survive. So tell me a little bit about Talon Simulations. You know, what made you come up with the idea? Where did that whole impetus and inception point come from?
Yeah, of course. It started actually as a mechanical engineering senior project at the University of Central Florida, where the final semester, actually final 2 semesters, is a course where you take a project and go through a design review with a customer, and every engineering student needs to go through it. And we came up with this idea to build a virtual reality flight simulator. It was right when the Oculus Rift headset was coming on Kickstarter in 2013, and we used the project as an excuse to buy one. And it was a cool concept and idea, and I was actually interning at Universal Orlando Resort at the time, working on their rides, and very specifically a lot of their large simulator attractions. And when I saw that we're going to now be able to find a way to provide these immersive style attractions at a much more accessible price point and form factor, it got me excited, and that's what spurred the interest in building this VR flight simulator. And after the 2-semester project and showcasing our prototype, we got a lot of recognition and support from the local industry and professors and faculty that you bring a lot of people in to come see what the students are doing at UCF. And being in Orlando actually is one of the reasons it got so much recognition, is because we've got people from Lockheed and Boeing and Universal and Disney that all come out to these showcases. So once we were getting this feedback, it sort of led a spiral of different opportunities for us. So we got accepted into a National Science Foundation program called Innovation Corps, and that allowed us to have some more funding to build a functional prototype, a little bit more so than the garage built prototype with parts from a junkyard for the class. So that was actually, really exciting once we got that. And I went back to get a master's degree while we were pursuing the I-Corps grant, and allowed us to compete more in business competitions, and took home a couple first place prizes that allowed us to get the company off the ground.
It's pretty amazing. And I think now I've seen these before because I've been into plenty of Dave & Buster's, but you guys have these in over, 150 locations, different types of machines that are inside of Dave & Buster's locations?
Yes. So we had brought to market in 2015 a single seat VR simulator. And around 2017, we got approached from Dave & Buster's to help them bring to market a 4-seat VR simulator. And they kind of had the design and prototype tested out and needed some help developing it more as a final product, as well as building them and deploying them in all of their locations. And so in June 2018, we helped roll out, it was 116 at the time, to all their locations simultaneously to be able to launch the Jurassic World game. And since then, Jurassic World's been phased out, but there's a Star Trek game, Men in Black, a game called Dragon Frost, and there's also Terminator. And in the next couple of months, we have 2 more new IP-based games coming to each of the simulators as well.
That is amazing. It's really cool. And I've actually been on one of them. I took my kids on one of them. We have one that's not too far away from us, and it's really amazing. It's like you were saying, it's fun to be able to see how far that technology has come from when we were kids and getting to put that single VR helmet on, which came in red and black lines, didn't really give you that full immersive feeling, to now where we're at and how quickly it's changed. It's just been amazing. But I would imagine having a lot of those games that are in Dave & Buster's and things like that, that you probably had to make some sort of change during the time of COVID. My understanding is you moved more towards soft skills and training applications. Is that right?
That's correct. And that had always been still an active part of our business. However, the location-based entertainment industry was adopting virtual reality quicker than the professional training industry. So we were selling some simulators here and there to the government, for the military, and some other commercial, actually a lot of universities as well. However, when the pandemic started, almost all of our arcade-based locations shut down, and we knew kind of right away we needed to refocus our efforts back onto training a little bit more so, and that allowed us to stay in business, and while still supporting our location-based customers as well, doing whatever we can, anything hygiene-based to help with their clients feeling comfortable coming back into their locations, and just the operations around that. However, there's always been a strong overlap too, because they're both high demand, high throughput environments that require as much uptime as possible. So our hardware is very similar between the two industries, and it's really the software that's changes. And right. That allowed us to quickly pivot and be able to do more flight simulator and driving training systems during the pandemic.
Makes sense. And especially I would assume that something like government entities or police, fire, anyone who's looking for a training simulation to be able to replicate those dangerous scenarios without obviously having to put someone into them. I'm sure that's got to be a path that you guys have already gone down a lot, if not really more focused that way during that COVID time. Have you guys been working with a lot of government entities with these types of simulations?
Yes, we have. And this year we've been a part of a big Air Force prototype program. And it aligned up pretty well, because 7 years ago when we were first pitching this to flight schools and commercial aviation entities, they're not early adopters. So they weren't quite on board with virtual reality taking the industry by storm. But now here we are in 2022, and it's gotten a lot better resolution, better form factor, and a lot more comfortable for training use. So it's now being accepted more as a training tool, and it's allowed us to be able to demonstrate this with the Air Force. It's a unique project in the fact that they hired 2 teams to build prototypes, and then we're going to compete against each other in August to show an example of the technology and for this particular program, and then hopefully it will be adopted into more systems throughout the country.
2 teams enter, only 1 leaves, fight to the death to see who wins. I'll bet on you, no problem there whatsoever. Have y'all been moving more into the realm of haptic feedback as well? I think at one point you were talking about gloves that might be coming out, but obviously the more senses that we can incorporate, the more realistic it's going to feel when you're hugging a hard turn or anything like that. But what have you guys been using so far in the world of haptics?
Yeah, it's something we've been testing a lot on, and as we're really a solutions provider, so almost every project we do is a little bit different. They might integrate the same motion platform or one of the ones from our product line, but they all are a little unique in the fact it might be a different type of VR headset or a different software, a different configuration. And so the number one thing that's consistent through all of our projects is a motion platform. And we've seen that to be very engaging for people. You can help as long as it's very accurate, which we have a very accurate motion software that aligns with the visuals, you're reducing simulator sickness and you're providing those acceleration cues that convince people that they're actually in this vehicle. So much so you can convince people they're going upside down when they really aren't on a virtual roller coaster. So it's an important tool that we don't do too many VR projects without the motion simulators. We're pretty strong proponents of implementing those. Then we always have force feedback steering wheels. We can provide force feedback or control loaded yokes and throttles and rudder pedals for an airplane. And those are the main senses that are important for flight training and driver training. And we've done tests with haptic gloves. So there's a few manufacturers that we're able to integrate with, and we've done tests with that. Allows you to feel knobs and switches while you're interacting with your instrument panel, which was always a big request that really since our very first prototype, we showcased people want to be able to read their instruments and interact with them. And the technology is finally evolving to the point of being able to achieve that. And now the direction we're going for training is mixed reality. And you're able to use chroma key and a pass-through camera on the headset to see your real hands, see whatever real objects you want built into that with the virtual overlay. So the haptics that we're getting are real haptic feedback now with the real instrument panel that, or whatever instruments you need to be physical, relayed with the virtual world so you can do flight training just about anywhere. And that's the direction I think it's going for professional training.
And they're only getting better, especially now with hand tracking and haptics getting more defined and smaller, easier to utilize. It's only going to get better as we move forward. So you touched on something there where you mentioned getting motion sickness. And I think a lot of people who haven't worked into the world of VR or XR, they've been avoiding it for that reason. Can you go through some of the things that help with eliminating those that type of sickness that people are getting? I know you mentioned we have a one-on-one, but could you go a little bit deeper and tell our audience kind of what that looks like and why that works?
Yeah, and the way I compare it is it's the opposite of a cruise ship. So in VR, if you're in a static seat and it looks like you're flying in a plane, but your body doesn't feel it, that disconnect between the inner ear and what you're seeing will get you sick. And on a cruise ship, it's where you think things aren't moving, but your ear feels it, and that gets you sick as well. So having any sort of acceleration cues, which is what the brain feels, just sort of that initial onset, and being able to sync that with what you're seeing will convince your brain like, okay, everything's fine here. Everything is syncing between my different senses and your vestibular system, which is really like your inner ear. So it is just important to be able to synchronize that and make sure that your brain knows everything's okay. So having some accurate motion in there, nothing overly crazy, although our amusement rides, we do turn up the motion a little bit because it's a little more fun. But the other key is having some sort of air blown on people. Like that's a trick for anyone that gets motion sickness or air sickness, like just having some sort of fresh air blown on your face. So that's incorporated into our amusement simulators as well. The Dave & Buster simulators have 2 fans on each person. It actually goes up and down their variable speed based off of like how fast you're going in the game. So that will help cool your body temperature down and reduce nausea. Now, we can't get rid of it 100%. There's always going to be a percent of the population that isn't very good with virtual reality and simulation in general. And my wife's actually a good example of that. So we know we're onto something good when she can get through a whole experience.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I never knew that about the fans, but it makes sense. Keeping the body cooler should prevent them from having as much motion sickness. But I think that's a good litmus test for you always. Like, honey, sit down on this. If you don't yak, we're good. We're going to continue this thing going. Hey, you told me that you guys are going to be doing an exhibit out in AWE here in a few weeks. You want to tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, we're excited to get out there. It's always been good to be at Expos. People love to get your tryouts in the seat, and it's hard to really get an example of what a VR simulation's like without being absorbed in the virtual reality. So we'll be out there at the Augmented World Expo in the Playground Pavilion, which is just the fun side part of the conference where people get to see cool VR tech and get to play with it and get to see what it's all about. And so, yeah, we're excited to be out there with a bunch of the other big players in this field, showcasing the latest in just immersive technology overall.
That's awesome. If anybody is in the area, make sure to go say hi to Brandon. Go check him out over in the playground section. And Brandon, if people wanted to reach out to you, if they wanted to get a hold of you on social media, what's the best way for them to go ahead and do that?
Well, you can get more information on Talon Simulations at talonsimulations.com. On Instagram, our handle is just Talon Sim. And YouTube, we have a lot of videos up to showcase the different projects that we've done and different examples of our simulators. And you can find me on LinkedIn. It's just Brandon Naids.
Brandon Naids. Appreciate it. Well, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank our audience for tuning in for another episode. We got a fantastic chance to speak with Brandon today about Talon Simulations, learn a little bit about why people get motion sickness, things that are coming, things that are in the way, things that are on the roadmap here. Haptics are really making a huge difference, and Brandon, really want to thank you for your time. For everyone who had a chance to tune in, feel free to continue to like, comment, and subscribe to our episode and to our channel. And you can find us on social media at ETIB Podcast or at KinCannonXR. I want to thank everybody for their time. Again, I've been your host, Brock Riney. Brandon, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was a great interview. And we'll talk some more emerging tech next time, everybody. Have a good day.